fishing, it's in my soul.
Welcome to the Salt Strong Podcast, disrupting fishing entertainment as you know it. Prepare to laugh. Prepare to get to know fishing legends in a whole new and unfiltered way. And on occasion, you might even learn a thing or two about fishing. Here's your host, Joe Simons. Like diamonds.
Hello, Salt Strong Nation. Joe Simons. Like diamonds, we are back. Got my main man, Captain Lionel James from Lion's Tail Adventures. What is up, buddy?
What up, though?
So I was just watching. I was just watching your latest YouTube video. You're getting pretty creative, man. How long did that take with all those designer clothes changes and stuff?
It took a minute. It took a couple hours. It's more of like the post production and like because I'm doing it myself, trying to make sure the frame is in focus. You know what I'm saying? But I just wanted to bring a funny point of view to picking out my clothing. You know, like I like clothing and I like to dress, and I was like, well, let me just do something where. How does a fisherman pick their clothing out? You know what I mean? You know, so it just kind of popped in my head, and I said, "Hey, well, I'm going to do it." You know what I mean?
Well, it's funny. The title I'm looking over here. Yeah, here it is. Too cold and windy to fish. How to catch redfish in basically bad conditions. And so I was like, "Oh, cool! I'd like to learn something here." And the whole beginning is all this really funny editing. It was awesome and sucked me right in. It was a great video. I was like, man, Lionel's got he's got too much time on his hands with this whole COVID thing.
That's true. That's true. I would rather be fishing right now, but I got to show my creative side, man. Like I've always wanted to be a storyteller and have these ideas. And with like any kind of social platform, you're allowed to express yourself.
Yep. And
then so what I did is I picked up a camera, took a couple classes, and now I'm figuring it out.
I love it, man. Keep the creative juices flowing. So we're gonna talk about catching slams and the Panhandle, and I know you lived over in the Melbourne areas as well, and talk about similarities, differences. But what's the whole backstory? How did you get into fishing in the first place?
Okay, so man, it's a little long, but my dad would always take me fishing on his days off. Mostly on Sundays, because growing up, I had my dad was a single father, okay. Right? He was active duty military, but when he would get off of work, he was a handyman, so he would do another handyman job, fix people's air conditioners and all that stuff. And that went to about like the evening time, just enough time for him to get home, make us a meal here and there, put us to sleep, and then he would go deliver pizzas for Domino's. So the only time that I really had, and this was like the early 80s, mid 80s, the only time that I really had quality time with my pops was fishing. So I got into it. It's kind of cliche, but my father took me fishing, and to this day, there's still fathers taking other kids fishing, and it just kind of stuck with me. You know what I mean?
And where did you grow up? Was it that Melbourne area?
So that was in Melbourne. My dad was stationed in Melbourne till the time I was about 5. And then shortly after that, he got an assignment to Eglin, which is in Destin. So we stayed in Eglin for about 2 years, I think. And right at 9, 10, 11, my dad got another assignment, and that was to Anchorage, Alaska. So,
oh, wow.
Anchorage, right. So Anchorage, Alaska for me is where I call home, because the time spent in Melbourne and the time spent in Destin, I was back and forth between my grandparents' house, my dad's house, because my parents were going through a divorce at that time. So I really didn't have, I maybe stayed in a school for a couple of years at the most, and then I had to move again, and then move again. So Anchorage is home to me because it was the place that I spent the most time. Like I finished my last 2 years of middle school there, I finished high school, and my foundation of friends are still up there. So yeah, I call Anchorage home, man. If you've never been to Alaska, you got to go.
That's a little bit different fishery than Florida.
Absolutely. And then we moved there, and I was 10, and we moved there in the middle of winter, November. So I ain't never seen snow. I've never seen a bear. I've never seen a moose. The only thing I knew about a moose was Rocky and Bullwinkle. So that was it.
It's so how was that, man? You never even seen snow, and all of a sudden they put you in Alaska in November.
To be honest, I don't remember it being really hard because of my upbringing, I was forced to like just kind of adapt really
Yeah.
quickly. From school to school, yeah, different kind of. When I was in Melbourne, it was a more I don't even know how to say like a friendly environment, I guess you could say. It was safe, but when my dad would go TDY, some of those areas that he went to was like Iraq and Desert Storm. He was a big part of that. But I had to go live with my grandmother, and my grandmother lived in Pensacola, and that wasn't necessarily like the safe. It wasn't the place that I was used to living.
Got it. Yep.
It wasn't super safe. Yeah, you know. So yeah, man, I've just always been a kind of dude to just adapt to whatever is in front of me. You know what I mean?
Yep. And speaking of that, you were fishing too. Like, it sounds like you grew up fishing. I assume you had to adapt to learn how to fish in Alaska.
Oh right, yeah, for sure. I always fished as a kid. When we were living in Florida, especially Destin, I would get out of school, and right down the street, about 2 or 3 blocks, was like this little inlet area. So I would just take my stuff, my little net, scoop it in the grass flats, catch some shrimp, and go fishing. And that's what I did after school. I played sports, but it wasn't really like my thing. My dad just made me play, and I'm glad he did, but I'd rather be like fishing than doing that. So when we left Florida in November, we finally got to Alaska. Along the way, you would see these rivers, and I would see these like weird looking, I don't know if you want to call them pixie sticks. It just didn't make sense. It had a long rod with a little reel at the end. And I was like, man, what is that? It ended up being a fly rod,
Pixie sticks.
So I was learning, yeah, I was learning a new culture as I went up there. So when I got up there, it was freezing cold. Everything was frozen. So I had to learn how to ice fish. And that's the first thing that I did. Ice fish, learned that. And being in the military, there's a lot of like help for you. So we had the outdoor rec, and they had like teachers and all the equipment. So I didn't really have to buy none, or my dad didn't have to buy none when we got there. We just kind of rented it, and the lakes that are on base were really safe. So I was ice fishing, and then when the snow melted, I was picking up the pixie stick. And I hope nobody gets offended by that. I'm just really joking. I love fly fishing. That's what it looked like to me when I was a kid.
That's funny.
I know some people can get sensitive about that. And so I learned how to fly fish like the Kenai River, Schiff's Creek, which is in the middle of downtown Anchorage. It's a big, beautiful river where these like big, ginormous king salmon come through, and it's right in the heart of downtown. And from the time I was a kid, I was just hooked on it. No pun intended.
That's cool. So, at some point, you made your way back to the Destin area, right? And then you were in Air Force, so you did all kinds of stuff in the meantime.
Yeah. So when I talk about sports, I ended up getting a scholarship to a school in Minnesota. I played ball for a couple of years. I said, man, this isn't for me at this point. I was just tired of football. So I was turning 21. And I said, I'm done with school. So I left that winter semester. It was January. My dad came home. I came home, and my dad was like, all right, it's January. Your birthday is July 11th. You got 6 months to get out of my house. No ifs, ands, or buts. So, all right. And so my dad was always in the military. So I said, you know what? I'm just going to go this route. I knew if I would have stayed in Alaska, there was nothing there for me at the time. Like it was, there was no guiding. Guiding wasn't on the radar. It wasn't, something I even thought about. And then, so I joined the Air Force. And the Air Force, that was 2004. It took me to Texas first, then California, then South Korea for a year. And after South Korea, I came back to Panama City. And that's where I finished my term. I got out in 2013. And when I got out is when I moved back to Destin. And the only reason I moved back to Destin is because after my dad retired, he moved back to Destin because his family was from Pensacola, so he wanted to be close to his parents,
Got it. Cool. Yeah. And then how did this whole fishing charter, and then now you've kind of made a name for yourself. This all happened in a kind of short amount of time then.
It feels like that, right? But I've been working on this for about 6 years, and still working very, very, very hard to figure, just make a super professional name for myself and just be taken seriously in this industry, for a very long time, But when my dad when we were living in Destin before we moved to Alaska, my dad would take me on these charter boats out here, and that's how we spent time together. And before he got his assignment, him and my godfather Jerome were actually going to start a business. They had just got the loan done for the boat. They're buying a business that was already started from another charter. He was on his way out, and next thing you know, like 2 or 3 days later, my dad got a phone call saying, "Hey, you're going to Alaska." So, the charter thing is just kind of something that was always in the back of my head as a kid, and then I kind of lost sight of it as a I guess you want to say end of my teens and into my 20s. But when I got back to Florida, I started fishing more. I started going on my own charters and redfish tournaments, and I was like, man, I really enjoy everything about the charter business for the most part.
Yep.
You can't. It's impossible to enjoy everything. You know what I mean? So I was like, well, I did 13 years as a firefighter. So when I started the business, I was still firefighting, and the schedule we had was 2 on, 3 off. So, like I said, I really got to thank my dad, because he always said, always have a backup plan, always have a second, third, and fourth option. So before I quit the fire department, I was doing the charters on the side on my days off. So first year was really slow. Second year started to pick up, and I could still schedule it to the point where it would work on my days off, right? Fourth year was like, now I can't keep up with the scheduling. I'm actually losing money, and I need to figure out what to do. So I put all the numbers together, that what I was missing, what I was making, and it was about equal to what I was making at the fire department. So I said, I'm going to go for it.
Wow.
And I quit. I did like a Hollywood quit. I really had a bad day with my my supervisor at the time. That next morning, I put in my 2 weeks, and I said I wasn't coming back. I had enough leave to cover the rest of my time, and I said I'm gonna go for it. I mean, I left on great terms, but it was probably an emotional decision.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So I'm out of here. I'm going fishing, literally.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you should have seen the faces on people. Like, there's a lot of people that thought I was going to fail, and it's a hard thing to believe. Like, I'm going to quit a government job, a paycheck on the 1st and the 15th, super good health care, then all the benefits you could ever want with a job. Right.
Yep.
But the control was just killing me, man. Like, killing me.
Well, you got to follow your passions, man. Got to follow the dreams, baby.
Yeah, man, for sure. So now I'm slinging fish, baits, and T-shirts. All right.
I love it. All right, so let's talk. Let's dial in that area, because it's an area that we haven't focused on enough.
Okay.
And I know everyone likes to say my area is a little bit different, and I agree to an extent. I'd love to hear. Right. I'd love to hear kind of how did you dial it in, because essentially at one point you were brand new. You had to figure out that fishery enough where you could catch fish consistently, and then put other people on fish consistently was not an easy job to do. Talk about kind of the journey through that and what you learned and mistakes and kind of like aha moments along the way for that particular area.
So if we're talking strictly about charter and putting people on fish, the way it first started, to go back, is that when I got back to Destin, I bought this little bitty, like, I don't even know if you want to call it a canoe or just, it was plastic, and I put a 12-volt battery on it and a trolling motor. And before I even had the idea of doing charters, I was learning the area that way, and I was going out with my coach Daniel. So in between fishing and firefighting, I had a pretty extensive MMA career. So I was doing that and trying to learn the area, and I was covering, and at the time it was just shallow water, flats and stuff like that. figuring out the tides, figuring out where these fish are at this time of year. So when I jumped into the charter, it was um, strictly inshore stuff, you know.
Yep.
But I started to convert that to more offshore reef type fishing because the demographic and the reason why I started to do that is strictly because my demographic in the area for my business is families that come down and want to fish. A lot of my clientele are kids 12 and under. So, you know, man, you fish, dude. Inshore, some days it is just, you can catch them all today, and then tomorrow you can go back to that same spot. And because the tide changed 45 minutes, you know, there's nothing there.
Yep.
Right. So I started to shift to offshore just because the appeal to keeping kids more attentive and getting the kids hooked on fishing was easier, you know, and it just fit the destined demographic of what's down here as far as tourists. So I started learning that. Luckily, I'd made some friends in between that ran charters. I had a good friend, Nick, who invited me on he runs a party boat. So I would just go on there with him sometimes, and I would just kind of watch how it was done. I took notes and mental notes. And then the biggest thing about charter fishing is experiencing failure on your own. So I would I'd pick 10 random spots a day, go out there and see what's on there and fish for myself, you know, or if I knew there was fish at this spot, let's call it A, and I had a trip, I would save spot A for the very last spot for of some of my trips, you know, in the beginning, and just kind of go discover new areas and then come back to that. So lucky for me, like reefs hold a variety of fish, and I was able to kind of look like I knew what I was doing, right? I just jumped into it, you know, like you kind of like, I think in any industry, you kind of know how you want to be treated as a person when you're paying for something. So that was the biggest part of mine. I just made sure like I was happy, I was telling jokes, and I was just being myself around my clients and making sure they were having fun, you know? What I've learned from my experience only is that when I take families fishing, it is all about the kids, you know, like some parents just don't care if they catch anything or not. Like make sure my kids have a good experience.
Oh, so yeah.
That's what I just kind of built my foundation on, man.
That's smart. So what percentage now is offshore versus inshore?
I would want to say it's 80-20, 90-10 offshore to inshore.
Oh, wow.
We do some inshore trips that, you know, like if they really wanted to target strictly bull reds, like I call it inshore, where we kind of base it on the tides and fishing the bridges or sight fishing, you know, the back base. But we have a great population of redfish on our beach that, I don't know, like I feel some days it's still a secret because we sight fish for these redfish on the beach. You could do this year around. And so I call it an inshore trip, but it's technically not, you know, obviously you're sight fishing the beach near shore, but the majority is offshore and sight fishing the beach, man, you know.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Because I see a lot of posts. You know, we have that really big Facebook group of 65,000 people and our insider club. And I know a lot of people, you know, do go up there and they'll hire a guy to maybe do some of the offshore fishing stuff. And then they're staying in a condo or a hotel on the beach. Like, man, I really just want to catch a red off the beach. And everyone seems to have trouble with it. Can you do it from from the actual beach on foot, or do you really need to be on a boat?
You don't have to be on a boat. It's just knowing where, for whatever reason, this place here is as they don't stop. They're moving up and down the beach, but you can kind of hone in onto what locations they're going to be at and based off their pattern. You know, they seem to just kind of congregate in areas where the condos are not. And I just believe that over time there's been so many people in the water, you know, but a good place to find them here is Topsail, and it's a state park that anybody can have access to, or the Henderson State Park. And you can catch them on the beach right there. You know, just like if you were, I think the most common mistake that I've seen is people tend to overcast for them. Like they get these big, it has its time and it has its place to where they have to cast like 100 yards out with these big, tall, tree-looking beach rods. But in all reality, these redfish are from the break of the water where the water meets the beach to about 30 feet out. You know, when they're feeding, they're right at that break, eating on these sand fleas that are coming in and out of there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, true story. Just yesterday, I was out and I just watched fish swimming on between redfish, bluefish, pompano, just swimming in that little break feeding. And it was one of the coolest things. It's the first time I've ever seen like redfish daisy chain and just kind of in a circle. But most people are just overcasting on them. You know what I mean?
Well, it's the same, you know, for snook down here where we are. We were fishing a point recently on this little island, and dude, the snook were, I'm talking little over ankle deep, right? I mean, less than a foot.
Yeah.
And if you're sitting out there wading and trying to cast as far as you can with a 10-foot rod, you completely missed them. I mean, they were super, super, super shallow. So I'm glad you mentioned that. That's good.
Yeah, they most of our fish travel in that you know, as it occurs with a sandbar, and they'll go here deeper a little bit throughout the day. But you know, there's that first sandbar, and in between that, like, you know, 30, 40 feet are right there on the and I got proof. So anybody listening to this, I got proof. I got to show you. They're right there, like right there, 10 feet from the thing, you know. And I got a lot of buddies that fly fish for them, and they walk the beach, you know, looking for them. So. Just, you know, keep your eye out on them. That's it. They're right there.
Wait, what are you using? Are you guys doing live bait, fleas, or lures?
You know, for the pompano, it's pompano jigs. I'm just a firm believer in lures. They work. Now, for a trip, as we get into later May and all June, I'll toss on charters cigar minnows in front of them. But sand fleas, any kind of shrimp, it all works out there, you know. I like using paddle tails. It's just, you know, you can cast more. Obviously, I think I've seen you use a lot of lures for the most part.
Yeah. And
I just believe in those. So, like I said, on a charter, definitely live baits. As far if I can get to them, but I did a charter a couple weeks ago, and we strictly threw paddle tails at them, you know, and it worked.
That's cool. And so, are you targeting? I know. I remember watching that episode you did with Blair Wiggins, and you guys were doing, you know, redfish and trout, and it looked like around some, you know, residential houses and docks and stuff. Are you doing much of that still today?
You know, I do that for luxury, and I say that because I still enjoy fishing, and I have to find ways to get out and just kind of be by myself. I take my paddleboard and do stuff like that on the flats where we're sight fishing and we're throwing lures and, you know, for the redfish and the trout. But as far as charters, not so much, man. I really enjoy the offshore experience because, one, you never know what you are going to catch. Some of the fish out there, like amberjacks, give a great fight. If you think this through a business perspective, and you know, a lot of people have never caught a shark before. They didn't even think that it was possible. Yeah. So. Yeah, and then we catch them right outside of our jetties, right on the same beach where these redfish are swimming at. And so I do a lot of shark trips, man. You know, it's fun. It's catch and release only. It gives a pull, and I'm a fan of any fish that's gonna pull. Period. You know. Yeah.
And are you using live bait, cut bait for the sharks?
Cut bait. You know what we'll do is most of the times we'll start. I always keep like a stock of bluefish in my freezer, but sometimes we'll go catch them right off, you know, from the jetty and or whatnot. And if I have to, I'll you know, obviously support the local bait shop and buy some bonitas. But by mid-June, you know, there's bonitas all over the place, so I always try to keep a few extra. Always, you know, always be prepared. But they're everywhere, man. So yeah, I mean, the only time I kind of get back to your question is that when I'm on my paddleboard, that's what I enjoy.
You got one of those L2 fish boards, right?
Yeah, dude, I love that board.
Yeah, those things are cool.
It was a frustration because I was on a blow up board. Dude, I'm a big dude, man, and you should have seen this. Just trying to imagine this big dude falling off this blow up board. Like it was horrific, man. It was horrific, but no plug. I don't work with them or anything like that. But it's just a really good board. You know what I mean?
Yeah, those things are solid. I can't imagine you on a. I think those blow up boards, they have their place, especially if you're traveling and you just want something quick and do some exercise. But I can't imagine, especially hooking into like a big bull red or especially a shark or something. I'd be falling off in a second. I don't have the right kind of balance either.
Oh, I did. I did plenty of times. So that's why I did a lot of research, and I was like, I'm getting that board because just the stability of it and the functionality of it is just it was what I needed, All
right, so talking less charters and more about you just going and getting tight lines. I'd love to hear what you think are the similarities between fishing Melbourne, where you lived for a while, and just let's just call it Destin, the Panhandle. What are some similarities and then some differences too, and things that you've learned?
I think here one of the biggest similarities is that you're going to find them in the same areas that you find them in Melbourne. You'll find them here. I think redfish are just. However, we don't necessarily have mangroves.
Yep.
And here our water is. Our water is super clear here.
Yeah.
Whether it be the bay or the beach, right? Because when you have an incoming tide, our incoming tide is obviously coming from the Gulf, but the minerals in it make it a clear emerald water, so that feeds all the way back into our estuaries. And the hardest part here, I believe, just from experience and fishing other areas, is that these fish have adapted to be more sensitive to what's around them. So it's really hard to sight fish and get really close. You need to make like extensive, accurate long casts to these fish to catch one. And then in Melbourne, I fished Mosquito Lagoon like 2 years ago, and like the guide that I took, he said put the bait right in front of his face, and you can't do that here. It'll spook him straight off the way.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So yeah, that's one of the big differences and similarities. Tactics, I think, is just all the same.
And use the same lures.
Yep.
Yeah. Same
lures. I'm a paddle tail till I die type of. That's what I'm throwing.
Now we're talking. It's funny because that's what we've used paddle tail. I lived in Texas and we've gone to Louisiana many times. Carolina, Savannah, where my wife's family's from, and I use the same.
Yeah.
We had that little slam shady. And like it keeps working. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. The toughest part is finding the fish.
Right. That is the hardest part. Yeah. That's when you're going from location to location, even your backyard. But as far as bait goes, they all eat a fish. So
Oh, the old paddle tail. So what? Let's talk about mistakes. It's always a popular topic. You had mentioned one about from the beach over casting. What are some other ones that you see them on your boat of people who are not necessarily complete newbies, or they could be, but just mistakes that you see over and over again? I think casting has to be one. Any other things that you see, or if you see other people that are out there and you're like, man, I wish I could tell them this.
The practice casting is a huge one. Some, I don't even know how I want to say, like, there's so many different like ways to cast, and a lot of people, bass fishing is a huge, huge industry on its own, and a lot of people watch bass fishing, and they want to do like underhand cast, and that's just like, you don't really have to do that, we're not skipping, to a dot or anything like that. So, otherwise, that's pretty much the biggest one, and just like not trying to be so fancy with it. I see a lot of guys that'll come on and they want to try these really super fancy knots and do it this way, and I'm like, man, you just keep it basic, dude. Like, and that's the biggest part of fishing. I just always kept it basic, and that's what works for me.
So let's go like to that last video that you did that I referenced earlier. So like, why did you pick that area that looked like it was in between some docks? Because I really want to hammer in that, like, because I think we both agree that's kind of one of the biggest issue. And then of course you need to be a good caster and simplify it. But in terms of finding feeding fish, what are some helpful tips there in that area?
So just kind of to set it up is that day, or let's just call that day that I caught the fish a Wednesday. So Tuesday night, the temperature dropped significantly.
Okay.
Like it went from 85 in the day into at night it went into the low 50s. So understanding that, I guess that would be one of the biggest things, understanding the conditions the night before, because the night before really helps you out in the next morning, right?
Yep.
On top of that, throughout the night, we had a strong north wind, like 20 miles, low teens to the mid 20s. And just kind of understanding where those fish are going to be the next morning. In that situation, I didn't think they were going to be, typically, if it was just a cold front that comes through, I think typically those fish would have been up more shallower that morning, sunbathing and all that stuff and moving through. But because of the wind tends to push fish off of things, I don't understand how that works, but it does it. You know what I mean? That day it pushed them off a little bit, and so they were sitting in these potholes, or not the grassy part, but the sandy part in between the grass.
Yep.
And they were just sitting there sunbathing. Some were in 4 feet, and somewhere in the 6 feet area. But every redfish I caught that day came from casting over the potholes, bringing the bait in. And I like areas in grass flats that have a huge grass flat with two docks, the grass flat is in between two docks, and there's a significant space in between those docks. I just think, one, it's easier for me to fish because I don't have to maneuver in and out of docks, and I can actually take my time to cover this whole flat.
Yep.
And I just think it provides more life for whatever reason. I don't really, I guess, have anything to justify if that's right or not. I just always tend, if there's a narrow dock with two docks enclosed and there's just a narrow space to fish, I'm going to fish the wider space,
Yep. And so you had potholes there. Were they on the wind protected side?
Yeah, they were about 50 yards from the bank, some of them were at the edge of the dock. I think it more or less had to do with water depth and temperature than anything else.
Okay, got it.
And understanding that. And then the other thing is that there was, as I was pedaling to that first fishing hole that I stopped at, I'm always kind of aware of what's around me. Like, and as I got there, or at the time getting to there, I wasn't seeing any kind of like bait jumping, more particularly like mullet activity,
Yep.
So when I got there was a lot of mullet activity, like a significant amount. So it just made sense for me to stay there. And then as I planted, and I would pull up the anchor every few feet, you would start to see the redfish just swim by. So when I started to see the redfish swim by, I just paddled back about 30 feet, and now I was kind of casting into their path. So just kind of putting all that together. I know it sounds like a lot, but it really, it really is not too much.
That's awesome, man.
Right.
Let's talk about wind, because that was something that we never really factored in as much until we started to. And we're like, man, this plays a massive role all year long, not just in the wintertime. You finding the same thing up there?
Yeah. So I started paying attention to wind more about 6 years ago, and it was the first time I took a charter in Louisiana. And the dude was just talking about, well, we have this wind, so that it was gonna push the fish over here. It's gonna push the fish over here. And I looked at him like, man, I don't want to fish on the windy side. I want to get out of the wind. And sure enough, like from that experience, and I learned my lesson to just shut up, right? So he took me on the upwind side, and we didn't see a fish. And then we went to the downwind side, and they were just all there. So for whatever reason, I don't and another experience I had was Mosquito Lagoon. Mosquito Lagoon is not tide driven, it's wind creates the current. And a guy I went out with there said the same thing. Like, we need the wind to change because that's when the fish are going to start eating. So I just started paying more attention to wind and taking notes on, the wind that day, the wind this day, what did it do? What did it do to the fish? And it does play a pretty significant factor.
Yeah, I think it's.
What about you? Like, what do you think about it?
Well, I honestly, rely on my brother Luke more than anything else. He is by far the better fisherman. But yeah, it was something that we never even, at least I never really considered. I always thought, hey, I'm going to go find bait and I want to fish when there's moving water. Like those are in terms of prior, that's all I really thought about. I obviously was like you, I want to stay out of the wind, right? I want to use it to my advantage. But there's been so many times, obviously, depending on if it's winter or summertime, the wind's going to play a different role. But man, it's mind blowing how often the wind can change everything. When you think, Absolutely. Even if you were fishing one day and the next day you go to that same spot, it could be just a slight change of wind. Like you said, the wind might have just pushed the fish off just 5-6 feet of the same area.
Right.
So I always ask people that because it's something, honestly, I'm still learning all the time too, but my brother hammers in my head. He's like, dude, you got to be checking the wind every single time. It plays a big role in the kind of.
Now.
Yeah, go for it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go for it, man.
I check the wind out every morning because it's gonna, for me, not just knowing where I'm gonna be able to fish, but just, if it's a super strong wind, like these fish, like you just said, like they might be pushed off just a couple of feet, which ultimately could make or break your day. I believe if to be a successful inshore guide, like paying attention to all those factors and understanding that, putting all those together is super important,
Yep. Yeah. I mean, we were fishing just yesterday and what we thought should have happened is all of these fish, it was snook, redfish, and trout. We were in an area where you could catch an inshore slam all on this one little flat, a lot of grass nearby. Yeah. And what should have happened even just from a few days ago is all those fish were up super, super shallow, but the wind was just hitting that area like crazy. And to your point, they were all pushed back, 3-4 feet of water just out a little bit deeper. And that's where we caught every single fish. So I don't know. I'm still intrigued by all of it. And that's why they say fishing's a constant learning lesson. It's a puzzle that is never complete, man.
You're constantly adjusting on the fly, on the fly, man, like no pun intended. Like that video you watched was the same experience, the wind, I haven't really figured out, and I'm still learning the moon. I understand that it plays a huge, huge factor in atmosphere pressure and all that stuff. So I'm still digesting that and trying to figure that out. Because I've caught fish on a full moon, and then I've not, and I've totally got skunked. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so I always want to ask, like, I want other people's opinion. I'm not intimidated to ask those questions. It's like, what do you feel about the full moon? Like, all right, I guess let me ask, like, how do you equate the moon phases into your daily fishing?
I personally don't.
You don't? Okay.
No.
You just go, right? Yeah.
For me, my brother is a little bit more scientific about it, but at the same point, this is episode 220 or something like that. And I usually ask those kind of questions. Hey, do you have a favorite tide incoming, outgoing? Do you have a favorite moon phase? And everyone's kind of got a different answer, right? So, because if it was just that simple that, you always want to fish on the new moon, on the incoming tide in the morning, like that would be the time to guarantee to catch fish. But man, we're all the same. I mean, there's been days where you got a full moon and those fish are feeding all night and they won't hit anything the next day. And there's been times where just the opposite happens, where it's just on fire. Now, I will say that we use that Smart Fishing Tides. That's an app that we help, or I guess it's more just of a mobile friendly website that we help build. And it has an algorithm in there that's pretty doggone accurate in terms of what the bite should be. And it does take into consideration, the barometric pressure and wind and weather and what the weather did yesterday. So it's got historical stuff in there at smartfishingtides.com. And it's got a little strike score. And it goes out to, I think, 14 days. And it gets more accurate, the closer it gets. But check it out. And if you guys are listening, at smartfishingtides.com, there's quite a few guides that are using it now. And once again, it ain't perfect, but it's usually pretty close. Like if you see it a 9, there's a high likelihood that you're going to catch a lot of fish. It's going to be a good day. And if it says a 5, obviously a 1 is like the worst. But if it says like a 4 or 5, it's going to be one of those grinding days. It's just going to be tough, and it's usually somewhat accurate. And
the numbers work backwards. Higher the number, the worse off.
No. Higher is the best. Like if there's a 10, then you better take the day off and go fishing. Is actually what it says.
Okay.
And so a 1 would mean it's a 4 or 5 would be a grind, so it's kind of tough, and you want it to be in that 7.5 to 9 range. Means like, all right, the fish should be fired up based on historical data and what's really happening now with the weather.
So I'm gonna check that out. I'm gonna check that out.
But I had Mike Anderson, right? The Real Animals.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So
yes, sir.
He was on, and I was asking him the same kind of questions. He's like, Joe, here's what I found. Because I've been fishing, 20 years, whatever it is, and he did tournaments like you, and has had fishing show, and he's kind of done it all. And he's like, in any given month, and he's like, I can't predict the days, but from what I can tell, in any given month, there's 14 days where I could have the newest newbie in the world and we all just catch fish. It's the easiest fishing in the world. It's like everything works. Like it's just, you get back and like, man, that was a magical day. And then there's 14 days where it's a grind. It doesn't mean you get skunked, but there's about 14 days where it's just a grind. And then there's 2 days just a wild card. You don't know what's going to happen. He's like, that's general what I found from all the years of fishing. And I never forgot that. I was like, that's pretty accurate.
Good way to put it, and then you said like it's not the system's not perfect. There is, if you're looking for a perfection in fishing, you're not going to find it, because as soon as you think like this is the day that it's going to be it, like Mother Nature she'll like, bite you in the butt, man,
learning lesson days.
Humble pie. Tastes so good.
I love it, man. So tell me what's next, man. Like, what are the big plans? I know I saw on Instagram you had some teasing about a fishing TV show, and I know you're a creative guy. What's next, man?
We were close, man, and we had everything lined up, and then the coronavirus hit, so we're kind of putting it on pause. But I just had some really, some things that I was going to go for as a kid. I did grow up watching fishing shows, and I don't know how to say this and be politically correct about it. However, I didn't have anybody that looked like me, walked like me, talked like me. Mm-hmm. So I want to build avenues for kids and young adults that might want to get into the outdoors and want to get into fishing, but maybe they're afraid to reach out to so-and-so because, they might not relate. I just want to build a bridge that if you are wanting to get into fishing, here's how you could do it. And through the fishing shows, I want to tell extensive personal stories through my life with fishing, through my friend's life with fishing, and just kind of expand on that without saying and giving away too much,
I love it, man. Yeah, I think that's needed, and you share with me, a little offline, like your grandfather's story. I know you probably don't want to bring it up, but
it's all good.
I think that is so needed, and I think any kind of show, regardless if it's fishing or not, anytime you can get that emotional piece into it, and the family and following your dreams and all that, man, that'll be a home run. So I'm rooting for you, man. That's cool.
I appreciate it. It's a big project. I'm trying to, I'm teaching myself how to produce, trying to become a better writer so I could become a better storyteller. And it's kind of off the topic, but, like one of my idols always growing up was Kobe Bryant. And, for him to transfer, his life from a professional basketball player to go win, an Academy Award for storytelling. It's like, I could do it too. It sounds kind of corny, but, I just want to build this gap where, kids there's an area where kids can reach out to, or anybody can reach out to and say, you know what, I want to do this. How do I do this? It's a support factor. And that they can do it,
Yep.
Yeah, man, that's ultimately, like, in one of the videos that I did not too long ago, if I wasn't fishing, I'd probably be doing some kind of humanitarian work. I love people, and I want to see people succeed, like, hands down. Like, that's it.
Well, I want to see you succeed, man. We need more good role models like you. And you obviously have the competitive edge. Sounds like college football. You kind of did it by accident just because you were very talented. And I didn't even know about the MMA stuff. And now.
Yeah, that's something we could talk about, man. I fought for a long time, man. I had I was rolling, man. And then, one thing is I turned my ACL. And since then I haven't been able to get back to that kind of physical shape that it needs to be in. So I've kind of focused more on bodybuilding than anything else. But yeah, man, I've been in the cage with some warriors, dude. Like it's out there. But that's another part of me that is probably like you or anybody that's plays sports. I'm super competitive, but not to a point to where it's gonna get in my way of like what's really important. You know what I mean? If that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yep. But still got to use that edge to win, baby.
Yeah. Absolutely. All day.
I love it.
You know what, though? I saw a video that you guys did, and you talked about paddleboarding, and I'm on this, like, paddleboard kick. I've never fished Tampa, and I've never, believe it or not, I've never caught a snook, man.
No way. Oh, we got to get you down here, man.
Never. So I would love to, like, collab on some kind of YouTube video where we just go paddle tail crazy on some snook. You know what I mean? Like, it's just something that I want to do, man. But I'm terrified of alligators. So if you guys got a lot of alligators back there.
Oh, there's no alligators.
All right. Well, I'm just saying, like, down South Florida, there's alligators everywhere.
Yeah, no, that starts, south of Naples and obviously Everglades. I mean, there's alligators, saltwater crocodiles, all kinds of, but you still don't see them very often unless you're like fishing in the 10,000 islands. But no, yeah, where we are, man, that'd be a blast. So you said paddle. Do you want to do paddle tail fishing or paddle board or both?
Paddle board plus paddle tail crazy, like paddle tail, like it's paddle tail or nothing. That's what
let's do it. Let's do it. Because I have an L2 fish board. Luke has one. You bring yours down. That'd be a blast, man.
Bet. Put it on your calendar, man. Let's do it.
All right.
But we gotta look at the winds, the moon, and the tide.
That's
right.
See
what I did there?
And then we'll report back to all of you how accurate we were.
And then we got to contact Mike and ask him which of the 14 days is the best of the month, right? I'm sorry, bro. I just like having fun, man.
Good stuff, my friend. Well, let's end it here and tell everyone where they can go follow you and subscribe and all that great stuff.
Yo, if you're in the Destin area and you want to go fishing, man, you can definitely check out my website, flyandtailadventures.com. Please, I am trying obviously to build a YouTube channel and just make it more a creative style, and it's a place where I can express my personality. So check me out at Lionel James Fishing, man, and then hopefully I come down your guys' way and make some ruckus and go fishing with you guys.
Oh, that'd be a blast. And lionstailadventures.com is the website too for bookings and all that. And if you guys are listening in the car or working out, whatever you might be doing, we always put all the show notes, and we'll put links to everything at saltstrong.com in the podcast section, so you can find everything there as well. But yeah, please go give Lionel subscribe, a like, depending on where you might be on social media, and book them if you guys are in that area. I say this for really all of our guide friends. It's been tough with this COVID thing, and especially on areas, like the Panhandle that rely a lot on tourism, and it would mean a lot of these guys, and they're going to be basically doing backflips for you to make sure you have a good time. I know you guys are all antsy to get out there and put some people on some fish, so I'm hoping this cleans up quick.
If you're listening, man, and you know a guide, like slide him $50.
Yep.
I know it's a tough time for everyone, but guides are typically a seasonal occupation, and as we get into spring and summer is when we tend to make our money, So I know there's a lot of men out there with a lot of pride, a lot of women out there with pride. If you just book them and put the deposit down and just say, hey, we're just putting the deposit, it would really go a long way for a lot of people.
Yep. Amen.
So
Cool, my friend. Well, thank you again. This has been a fun one. Good conversations, and yeah, we'll talk offline about trying to find some dates in the future for some snook fishing.
Let's do it. All
right, buddy.
All right.
Chat soon. Thanks, guys.
'Cause fishing, it's in my soul. It was